something to do with the motivation.
It's getting a little itchy.
Not enough gray in it.
Yeah, no, there's some.
Give him a year.
Well,
Okay.
we'll call this meeting to order. Do roll call.
Councilmember Larimore.
Here.
Councilmember Rush.
Here.
Councilmember Simmons.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Tessari.
Here.
Mayor Bootsma.
Here.
Pledge of allegiance.
Yep. Stand. Hand over your heart.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any public comment? No. Seeing none? Okay, we'll move on.
City Council business?
City council business.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, thank you for showing up to this meeting. The item before you is an urgency ordinance that basically you adopted on October 26th, where you adopted this 45-day urgency ordinance regarding the marijuana cultivation, as was anticipation of Prop 64 passed. As you know, Prop 64 did pass, but because we adopted the ordinance already, we established pretty much a ban on outdoor cultivation. So there's no non-conforming businesses that can come in and say, hey, we've already been operating. So because of the nature of this ordinance, it was effective for 45 days. We have to come back to the council and basically explain findings why we want to have it extended. And under law, we can have that extended for a period of 22 months and 15 days or 10 months and 15 days with another subsequent one-year extension. The government code allows us to do this, and basically the ordinance before you is identical to the ordinance that you adopted. The only thing that we're adding to it is the fact that since Prop 64 did pass, it is starting to demonstrate the uncertainty of how Prop 64 is going to be implemented. There's a lot of cities that had certain anticipation with respect to the tax, how the tax is going to be done. The state really hasn't come down and articulated that. Secondly, with the new administration that'll be coming in on the 20th, we really don't know now how the new President Trump, is going to be dealing with marijuana on a federal level. He may take a much more restrictive position on it. If that's the case, that's going to create some apprehension on our part if we don't do something like this. So what we're asking you to do right now is to make a motion to approve this proposed urgency ordinance, extending ordinance number 2016-09, regulating personal cultivation of marijuana and banning outdoor personal cultivation for a period of 22 months and 15 days, in which case we will see how this develops. And if there's still uncertainty again, we'll have another one-year extension. But this time, we want to get it past 45 days. And the reason why we're having a special meeting now is because if we waited until your December 14th meeting, that 45 days would have expired. So by having our meeting tonight, we'll give the extension, but the extension will not be effective until the expiration of the 45 days. So it doesn't supersede the remainder time. So when that finally expires, then the extension will take effect. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any other questions, comments? Does that require another reading?
No, well, it's a reading to extend it. Yes, that's exactly right. So it would be an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Eastvale extending interim urgency ordinance pursuant to California Government Code Section 65858, regulating personal cultivation of marijuana and prohibiting outdoor personal cultivation. Right, Stephen?
Correct.
Adam?
Two-part question. What is the thought on a permanent ordinance taking the place of this? And if that's not in the cards, what happens after all of our extensions have been extinguished?
And that's a good question. Basically, we want to give ourselves this first extension. Most of the time, when a city adopts a moratorium they will adopt a permanent ordinance prior to the expiration of the extended period of time. Either keeping it the way it is, or in finding out how this law starts to develop and become more understandable, we can make some changes to it. But I would say that with some confidence, prior to this expiring, I think we'll have a permanent ordinance in place. It doesn't mean that you have to go the full extension. You can adopt a permanent ordinance at any time.
Okay. Any other questions? I'll
I
make
have
a motion.
another question. Is there a, I admit I haven't sat down and read chapter and verse of the entire proposition, but is there a difference in the definition of the household use between our ordinance and the proposition?
Yes, that's a good question. Their definition is very ambiguous. So in our in our ordinance, what we did was we made sure that household does mean it's the person who has title to the property. Under the Prop 64, Adam, the way the language reads, it really kind of gives flexibility to have a number of people who are members of the household, and they can have 6 plants. We wanted to reduce that and mitigate that possibility by having one household. So yes, we changed that definition.
Joe?
Just my understanding, and I just want to clarify, that also would, the same thing would apply if somebody's renting a home.
Correct. Correct.
I mean, a renter could have 6 plants, right?
No, the owner.
The owner,
Just the owner.
right. Or if the owner says, hey, you can do it, but it's only one
One person.
household.
Yeah, one per household.
Right. We want to make sure that in all the houses in Eastvale, if anybody wants to grow plants, it's going to be 6 plants only.
So does that mean that somebody that is a renter that doesn't have permission can, from, I mean, does it have to be written? How would?
Let's see. That's a good question too. I believe we. And also they have to be 21 years old anyway.
Some of that, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Basically, we only allow an authorized grower to do this, and then under here, the authorized grower shall reside full-time in the residence where the marijuana cultivation occurs. So basically, it's one person.
So it's not about deeds.
Exactly.
Okay.
Let's see. And it says not more than 6 plants
Gotcha. So just.
can be permitted for cultivation. So we're limiting the number of plants and restricting the authorized grower under it. Where under Prop 64, it's kind of general.
Yeah, it's kind of like persons maybe, or what shall be able to.
Right,
up to
exactly,
6 plants.
persons, it says persons, and that can be 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, a co-op. We just wanted to make sure, since we are prohibited from banning personal marijuana, we wanted to make sure that we restrict it to the 6 plants only.
Does this open us up to, I know we can restrict, but we can't override, does this open us up to possible liability related to somebody wanting to bring forward a suit?
And that's a good question, and that came up in a couple of the webinars that we attended with that. Most of the cities and the city attorneys have concluded that Prop 64 basically said you can't prohibit it, but it did not say that you could regulate it. As long as the 6 plant rule applies, that's fine. So we believe that by restricting it to the 6 plants, we figure we're within the parameters of what Prop 64 is saying.
And it's actually the proposition that lists 6 plants.
Right, and the language did say
Yeah.
6 plants. They were just a little ambiguous with respect to who in the household could do the 6 plants. So that is another reason too, where I think there's gonna be some cleanup legislation. Hopefully that cleanup legislation will follow what our code is, and that's the purpose why we're doing this.
It'll be either the legislators or the judges
Yes.
deciding.
Should a person that's gonna grow this stuff be registered with the city?
They have to, there is a whole permit process they have to go through. So it's not like somebody can say, oh, let's grow 6 plants and that's it. They have to get actually a permit from the city to do that. So there'll be a building official to go out to make sure that all the requirements in our ordinance are met. And again, that's to obviously mitigate potential dangers of just growing randomly without parameters. And so there's a permit process that they have to do.
And the cost of that permit would offset the cost of having our people go out?
Yes.
And would the health department be attached to them?
You know, that's a good possibility, Dickie. We haven't necessarily addressed that, but building can always bring health department with them, the county with them, to ensure that. We're more interested in making sure that the actual processing of it complies with all the building codes, so you don't have these dangerous conditions that exist sometimes when they grow this stuff.
That's really the problem with the proposition, is not that it just allows the growth and the smoking, it allows all the byproducts. that come
Exactly,
from it. So they're gonna be firing up their butane and making their honey oil.
right.
It's all legal.
And the other thing too, keep in mind is that we always have a fallback position that even with all the regulations that we have in there, if at any time someone is utilizing this and it becomes a public nuisance, we can go in there and say, yeah, but what you're doing is creating a public nuisance. That includes if people or neighbors are going, we're smelling marijuana constantly. And so that's something that we can turn around our code and say you can't do that. So we're trying to right now with the language that we have available, we're trying to confine the use of this as restrictive as possible. And that's why at some point in time when this thing starts developing and there's any cleanup legislation, we'll do a permanent ordinance.
In 22 months?
Yes,
Before-
or before.
May not even be necessary.
We don't know, and like I said, there's a lot of uncertainty even now as a result. So, but I believe we're covered as best we can.
I would move staff's recommendation as proposed.
Second.
Councilmember Lorimore,
Aye.
Councilmember Rush,
Aye.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Tesari,
Aye.
Mayor Bootsma.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for doing that.
Are you still taking tabs over there?
It's running.
He's got an open tab over in Wild Wings.
We're at the meeting's adjourned.
Oh yeah, I got 42 minutes.